So these are the setup topics we are going to cover. So we are going to learn what WSDL is, and why WSDL is used. And WSDL is XML language. So we are going to see the document structure, and then we are going to see XML vocabulary that makes up WSDL document, and then we are going to study message element. This is the one of the 7 elements that make up WSDL document. We'll talk about the concept of operations, and then we will talk about importing and authoring style, and finally we will talk a little bit on WSDL 1.2. So what is and why WSDL? So WSDL is an XML language for describing web service. So it is a contract between service provider and service client. In fact, once a client has an access to WSDL, that is only thing that is required for the client to know what services are available and how to invoke those services. Okay. So in WSDL, web service is described as a set of endpoints, and these endpoints are sometimes called ports. Okay, and these ports or endpoint is made of 2 parts. One is the abstract part, and the other one is a concrete binding part. Okay, so abstract part includes operations and messages, and concrete binding part is defining for networking protocol, an address and encoding scheme. Okay, so we're going to talk about these things in a bit more detail later on. So if you don't understand what I'm talking about in this particular in these 2 bullets, don't worry about it. The reason they have this separation is reusability of this abstract part. Okay, the reason is as we talked about, the SOAP could be deployed over different transport. It could be HTTP, which is probably the mostly the case, but it could be over JMS, or it could be SMTP. So when you create a WSDL, if you have the abstract part separately, then that could be imported using a different communication or networking protocol. Okay. Anyway, so don't worry about it. I think that might confuse you a little bit, but as long as you understand WSDL is XML language for describing web service, that's the only thing that I want you guys to remember. So WSDL document has to be provided, or is provided to the client for any web service. So if this is a web service, he has to provide web service description language document to the client. Okay, as I said before, that is the only contract that is needed between client and server. Okay, so that contract should actually specify what services are available, and what makes up those services, and how to invoke those services. So everything that is needed by the client should be specified in the web services description language document. Okay, and this web service could be actually communicating with other web services. So there could be credit card web service, hotel web service, airline web service, and in that case, this guy is playing the role of web service client of airline web service, or is playing the role of the client, web service client, as far as hotel web service is concerned. The same thing with this guy. So in that case, any communication between web service client and service provider has to be specified in a form of web services description language document. Okay, so any web service client and server communication, there has to be one WSDL document. Okay, so that is a service contract. So how and where WSDL document is used? Typically, web service provider, web service provider will actually have WSDL document available. Okay, and then WSDL document should be accessible to the client. In the long time ago, there was what is called the UDDI registry, which actually, you can think of it as the registry of all the web services. And they actually provide the location of WSDL document of each service. Now, UDDI is rarely used these days, so this is probably not important. So the way the client can get an access to WSDL document is maybe service provider will post it on the website. Okay, and or it might actually send WSDL document to the client through email. Okay, so as long as client has an access to WSDL document, then client should be able to invoke it. Okay. So why we want to use WSDL? So again, WSDL enables automation of communication details between communicating partners, meaning client and server, so web service provider, and the client. So machines can read WSDL document, and machines can invoke a service-defined WSDL document. So because WSDL document defines everything that is needed in precise manner in terms of what service is available and how to invoke those services, even machines can read WSDL document, and you should be able to know what service is available and how to invoke those services. So actually the SOAP, the lab exercises, we were able to test the web service, right? Because we actually provide the WSDL document, and the NetBeans should be able to read WSDL document. It knows what service is available and how to invoke it. Okay. It could be also used for arbitration. So you can find out whether communication is based on particular WSDL standard. When the client sends a message, SOAP message to the service provider, the SOAP message has to be compliant, as defined in the WSDL document. Okay, so there could be some arbitrator in the middle to say, oh, this SOAP message is invalid or not. Okay, based on what has been specified in WSDL. Okay. Yeah, one of the things, as we are going to see in a few seconds, one of the things that you specify inside the WSDL document is XML schema. Okay. Alright, so let's move on to document structure. So this is the complete WSDL document structure. So here we have defined WSDL namespace, right? And prefix is WSDL. So we are using WSDL prefix for all elements defined in WSDL namespace, like definitions, types, message, port type, binding, service. So these are all elements defined in the WSDL namespace. Okay, and target namespace, and then we have two source namespaces, TNS and SOAP bind. Okay. Alright, so basically it has types and has a messages, has a port type, and has a binding and service. So we are going to learn each of these elements in detail in the following slide. Okay, so these are WSDL namespaces. So these are the namespaces that are defined in WSDL specification. Okay, so alright, now we are going to learn WSDL XML vocabulary, those types, message, service, binding, port, these things using a very simple web services description language document. So the web service that we want to describe using WSDL is stock quote service. It's a very simple stock quote service. So there is only one single operation called the get last trade price. Okay, and it's going to be deployed using SOAP 1.1 over HTTP. And request message has a type called request message is basically a ticker symbol whose type is string. And response returns a price, and that is going to be the type of float. So this is a very simple web service we'd like to describe using WSDL. Okay, so these are WSDL elements. Okay, so these are the 7 elements that we are going to learn. Okay, among these 7, these 4 types, message, operation, and port type, these part represent abstract description of WSDL, and this binding and port and service, they describe concrete binding part. Okay, so again, I'm going to explain what that means later on. So let's move on with types. So types basically is using XML schema, and it includes XML schema of the XML message that is being exchanged. Okay, so let's say an example. So if you want to send XML message, that the request message should contain ticker symbol whose type is string, and the response message contains a price element whose type is a float. So inside the schema, it is a genuine XML schema. Okay, yeah, in this case it doesn't really have to be a complex type because we are just sending one single element, right? Okay, so it doesn't really have to be a complex type. It could be even simple type. Okay, but you know, as far as the syntax is concerned, is a valid XML schema. Okay, so this is schema definition, and we have two elements defined. Okay, and we are using anonymous complex type, right? Okay, so this element is called the trade price request, and it is a type of this anonymous complex type, which includes a single element called the ticker symbol, whose type is string. Response element is called the trade price, and again is a complex. It is defined as a complex type, and it contains a single element called the price, and the type of it is float. Okay, so we have defined the two global element. Okay, as complex type. Okay, all right. So this is type. So you can think of types as basically XML schema. Next is messages and operations and port type. So these three, messages and operations and port type, along with types, they are describing abstract part of your WSDL document. Okay, so messages are describing abstract typed definition of the data being exchanged, and operation is basically combination of input message and output message, and it actually is describing an action. Okay, so action is made of input message and output message. So in our previous hands-on lab, you know, when you send, when you actually call the say hello, right? So you know the request message contains Sang Shin, and response message contains hello Sang Shin, right? So combination of those input and output messages making up a single operation of say hello, right? Okay. Port type is a collection of operations. Okay, so port type, you can think of it as abstract definition of a service. The reason we call abstract definition of a service is because it doesn't say anything about what communication protocol you are going to use and what is the encoding scheme you are going to use. Okay, so let's see examples of this. So we have defined two messages. The first message is called get last trade price input, and it contains a part, okay, and that part is the type of trade price request. So that is actually coming from here. Okay, and this is the response message, and it's named as get last trade price output, and again it's actually using the element, a global element defined in the XML schema. Now up to this point you don't know whether this is a request message or this is response message, even though you know it has the name of input and output, so you can kind of assume as a human being that this is probably request message and this is probably response message. Okay, now but machines don't know up to this point. Okay, now third element is port type. Port type is named as a stock code port type here, and port type, as I said in the previous slide, is a collection of operations. Okay, in our example we have a single operation called the get last trade price, and operation is made of input message and output message. So this input message is pointing to this message. This is the output message pointing to this message, this guy. So now the even machines know that this message is used for request message, this message is used for response message. And there could be multiple operations, but in our example here we have a single operation that made up of input message and output message. Okay, all right. Okay, so let me finish the binding part, the important service, and I'm going to pause and get some questions from you guys. Okay. All right. So far, what we have described, what we have learned are the elements that abstractly describe a web service through messages and operations and port type. Okay. Now, these next three elements, now you're actually dealing with the concrete communication protocol. So binding element specifies concrete communication protocol such as HTTP or SMTP and things like that. And the data format. So this data format is called encoding. Okay. So protocol, communication protocol examples are SOAP 1.1 over HTTP, SOAP 1.1 over SMTP. So these are communication protocols that can be specified using binding. Okay. Encoding examples are SOAP encoding and RDF encoding and things like that. Okay. So we're going to talk about this one in a bit more detail later on. Now, port defines single communication endpoint. So it is the one that specifies the endpoint address for binding. Okay. So it should actually be, if you're using HTTP as transport protocol here, then it's supposed to be in the form of URL. If you're using SMTP as a transport protocol, then port should contain email address. Okay. So as I said before, WSDL document contains everything the client needs in order to find out what services are available and how to invoke those services, right? So how to invoke those services should include address information. So that address information is defined in this port element. Okay. And then service is an aggregate set of related ports. So you can think of service as a collection of ports. So let's see examples of this. So this is a binding element, right? And on the top, this is the name of this binding. Now, what it does is that it's binding that port type that we defined. So remember this .code port type. So this is basically a port type that we have defined. Okay, the binding element is binding this port type, which is a collection of operations, with concrete communication protocol. So concrete communication protocol is specified with this. In this case, it's using SOAP, and the transport protocol is HTTP. Okay, so if you are using SOAP over SMTP, then it's going to be schemas.xml soap.org/soap/smtp. Okay, so these two lines specify communication protocol, again typically SOAP over HTTP. And then for each operation you are going to specify what is the encoding scheme. Okay, so when you are using literal, okay, what it means is you are going to use the what it means is the contents. Actually, no, let me actually repeat. So, I want to actually explain this guy. Sorry. So when you're actually specifying the communication protocol, you can specify the style as well. This style could be document or RPC style. So in the hands-on lab exercise, you're going to actually build WSDL document of document style and RPC style. So what's the difference? When you're using document style, what that means is that the body of SOAP message reflects XML message, XML data. If you're using RPC style, that means the body of SOAP message represent name of the method and set of parameters for that method. Okay, so that is what this style is all about. Now in terms of encoding, that is like a literal. So when you're saying literal, what it means is that I'm using XML schema as encoding scheme. Okay, so data types are represented using XML schema. Okay, so that is binding. So binding is representing concrete communication protocol along with encoding scheme. Okay. Now the service is basically collection of ports, and port is you provide the actual endpoint address for that binding. And because this guy is using HTTP, the binding, so this is the binding. So this is binding. Basically, what this port element is doing is that it's actually providing endpoint address for this binding. Okay, so this is a stock code SOAP binding. It's actually giving an address. Because this guy is using HTTP, the actual address inside port is going to be in the form of HTTP. Okay, if the transport is SMTP, then it's probably location of SOAP address element is going to be email address. Okay, so this is a big picture. Okay, so port type is basically collection of operations. An operation is made of input message and output message, right? And this port type is bound to a particular communication protocol, typically SOAP over HTTP. Okay, and the service is basically providing an address for this binding. So the port should have an address. Okay, and the service could have multiple ports, and the service B could have other set of ports. Okay, so this is the web service invocation. So let me actually finish up to this point, and I'm gonna pause, and I'm going to entertain some questions you guys have. Okay, so the client will send a SOAP message. Okay, so SOAP message could contain part. So part is basically representing XML messages. Okay, so this is a request message, and then this is a response message. Okay, so for each message, part is some data type. So it's using XST, meaning XML schema, predefined types like int or something like that. And this input and output message form an operation. Okay, so combination of input message and output message make up an operation, and collection of operations form a port type. And the binding specifies how operations are accessed using particular protocol, such as SOAP over HTTP. Okay, so it's a little bit of repeat of what I talked about. Okay, so I'm gonna actually pause at the moment, and let's see whether you guys have any questions. Okay, so we talked about 7 elements, right? Starting from types and message, and then operation, then port type. Those are abstract part of WSDL document. And then we talked about binding element, and then we talk about the service element, and service element contains port element. Okay, now let's talk about the message element a bit more detail. So message element is made of one or more logical parts like this. So this is WSDL definition, and this is a message, and name could be my message or whatever, and then it does contain a part. Okay, so element attribute refers to XST using QName. Okay, so basically you can specify element, or you can specify the type. Okay, but WSI basic profile says you should use element only, so you cannot have in fact type. So if you have if you use type, that is a valid WSDL document, but WSI basic profile says that's not recommended. Okay, alright, so element attribute refers to XML element using QName. Type attribute, yes, so this type could be some type, but again, use always element. Okay, so I'm gonna actually explain that concept one more time when we do the exercise, but for now it might be confusing to you guys. Okay, so don't worry about it. So in this case, this is when we define the message. So instead of using, so in WSDL, when you're creating a part, you can actually specify the type, like like an item or a PO type. That is a valid WSDL syntax. However, WSI basic profile says that's not. In WSI basic profile says, you should actually define the type like this as explicit type, and then you have to use element to point to it. Okay. Okay. So if you don't follow this convention, then WSI basic profile says, this the WSDL does not follow WSI basic profile, so it will flag it out. Okay, types of operations. So types of operation could be one way. In this case, endpoint receive the message, but it doesn't send back the response message. Request and response message is that endpoint receive the message, then send back the correlated response message. Okay. So the way that you are going to specify one-way message is that you are going to have only input message rather than output message in your operation. So operation could be one way or request and response. So if it is one way, then it's going to have just input message. If it is a request and response operation, then it will have input and output message. So this is one-way operation, so you can see it has a single input message, right? And this is a request and response message. So the submit purchase, this is input and output message, and you could also have a fault message as well. Okay, so these two request and response operation. Okay, so importing and authoring style. Okay, so authoring style recommendation is to have reusability and maintainability in mind. Okay, so you could create WSDL documents in three separate parts. One is data type definition, which is XML schema definition. So example we have seen is that we have all these three things in a single document: XML schema definition, abstract definitions, which is the message and operation and port type, and specific service bindings. Okay, so this is the binding element and service element and port element. Okay, so instead of having all these things in a single document, you might want to have them in three different parts, and then each document underneath will import the document it needs. Okay, so let's see examples of this. So this is XML schema. Okay, so this is the basically the XML schema that we have seen. So we are going to capture this guy as a separate file called the stockcode.xsd file. Okay, so again it contains these two global elements. Okay, and then this is the abstract part, which is called stockcode.WSDL. Okay, so here it's going to import the XSD file that we just created as a separate file. Okay, the reason this separation is useful is because I can use this XML schema in different WSDL document, right? So usability of this is enhanced. Okay, same thing over here. Here we define only abstract part like a message and port type. Okay, and operations. Operations. Okay, and now the third document is the one that actually import this second document, stockcode.WSDL, and here is going to define concrete binding. So in terms of what is the transport is going to use, and what is the encoding scheme is going to use, and what is the address. Okay, the reason again to have this separation of this abstract part is that because this could be actually used in another WSDL document, they might actually use different transport. Maybe it's using SMTP or JMS. Okay. Okay, so WSDL 1.2 is describe XML info set, and it's aligned with the SOAP 1.2, and it does also define few more message exchange patterns. Okay, but in terms of the reality, most of the implementations out there are still SOAP 1.1 and WSDL 1.1 based. Okay, so that is the end of the presentation. So now let's actually take a look at the hands-on lab. Okay. Hands-on lab is that is WSDL. Oh, not that one. Oh, okay. WS_WSDL basics. Okay. So here we are going to actually build. Here we are going to actually build WSDL document using WSDL editor from Eclipse. Okay. You can certainly build WSDL document using your favorite editor. Okay. But here we are going to use the Eclipse. Okay. So here we are going to create two WSDL document. One is using RPC literal, and the other one is document literal. Okay. All right. And also we are going to study the example WSDL document. Okay. So example 1, what we want to do here is that we want to add two operations. One is add method, which receive two int type, and then hello operation. So these are two operations. Okay. So then we are going to use a SOAP over HTTP as a concrete transport binding protocol. Okay. Alright, so let's actually try this. Okay. we have already created XML examples, the project before. You can create another one if you want to, that's fine. Okay, then let me just start the Eclipse first. And then we are going to create WSDL. So you are going to say file new, other, and if you expand web services, you are going to see WSDL file. Okay, and so here I'm going to create a new WSDL file. So I'm going to say this is a folder, my WSDL S, and the name of the WSDL is going to be my WSDL RPC literal.wsdl. Okay, and then you can select SOAP binding options. Okay, so we're going to try document literal and RPC literal. So we're going to try with the RPC literal first. So as I talked about, if you're using RPC style, that means the contents in the SOAP body represent method and parameters. In the document style, they represent XML document. Okay, so finish. So now it's going to actually provide this UI. Okay, so you don't really have to use this UI unless you want to. Okay, so as long as you understand the syntax of the resulting WSDL document, that's fine. So it basically creates this one as a default. So it contains default operation called new operation. Okay, so you can change the name of this new operation to add, or you can create a new one. So here you can zoom in and zoom out. Okay, right? So basically you can take a look at the source. So for now it doesn't really have anything except the new operation that it automatically creates. Okay, it has a service and it has a port. Okay, so we are going to add operation. Okay, so you basically right click it and then select add operation, and then you are going to give input and output. So you're going to change this one to X, and the type of it's supposed to be int, right? So right click it. For now it's set as a string as a default, so you're going to actually set the type to int. Okay, and same thing for here then we are going to add part. Okay, we're going to take care of the output. So here you are going to add part. Okay, so the part, yeah, and then we okay, so we basically add another part because we just added X. We need to add Y. Okay, so right click add part, and we are going to add Y. Again, it has to be int type. Okay, all right, output type is supposed to be int type as well, so you're going to actually name it as result, and then the type is supposed to be int. Okay, all right, and you're going to delete this new operation because we do not need new operation. Instead we need hello, right? So you're going to actually create the hello operation doing the same thing. So basically hello, and then input is supposed to be name and output is supposed to be result hello, and they are both a string type. Okay, alright, so if you take a look at the resulting source code, basically we have defined the message, two messages. Well, actually so this one should not be there because we deleted it, right? Okay, yes, this one should be removed in this example. Let me just write it down. Okay, so I'm gonna clean that up. And then we have four messages. So request message for add, response message for add operation, and this is for hello and hello request and response. Okay, and why we have actually multiple? This is oh yeah, looks like I actually play around it, and then yeah, so this one all should be removed. Okay, so what we need is this part, and then response part. Then I also have this hello response and hello response. Okay, yeah, looks like this is something that needs to be removed as well. Okay, so there should be four messages, two messages for add and two messages for hello. Okay, and then we have port type. Okay, so port type is a set of operation, and there should be only two operations, add and hello, right? Okay, And then we have a binding element, okay, which is binding this port type. This is the port type. And again, we are using transport of HTTP. Now this is the RPC, okay. So instead of document, I'm creating RPC style, and this is an operation name, okay. And then we have a service. Service actually provides, you are basically binding this binding with this port address, okay. Now one thing you notice is that in this case you don't see any type definitions, right? The reason is because we chose to use RPC style. Remember, RPC is representing the name of the method and parameters, right? Okay. So in this case, this is actually name of the method, and these are parameters. Okay, so there is no XML document needed because it's representing the method and parameters. Now in exercise 2, we are going to create doc and literal. So when you're using document style, that means you are going to use the contents of SOAP body as XML message, which means we need XML schema. So that's the reason we have to create XML schema file. So this is the same XML schema file that we have created. Okay, so basically this is the XML schema file that we have created. Okay, and now we are going to create a whistle document. So when you are using document style, first you have to do is XML schema of the messages that you want to send and receive, and then you can create a whistle document. So in this case, it's a whistle document, and then I say document literal. Okay, and then it will actually you're gonna actually delete this guy, new operation, we don't need it, and then we're gonna add operation. Okay, and then set and add parameters. Okay. Now at this point, when you actually you click set element, okay, you can create a new element, or you can actually set the existing element. This element is supposed to be coming from XML schema. Okay, so this is the XML schema that we have defined right here, right? Okay, all right. So once you are done with this, okay, you can see in this case it has a schema included. The reason is because we use document style, this document style, meaning the contents of SOAP message, meaning the contents of SOAP body should represent XML document, and that XML document is represented by the schema. In this case, the schema is this schema location of this file, xny.xsd file, and yeah, so that actually the schema element, the element from the schema is actually this guy, global element x and y, and new operation response. Okay. Oh, actually, yeah, looks like I didn't actually change this one with the hello. Okay. All right, exercise 3 is you're going to take a look at the example whistle document. So if you expand phone banking, you are going to see phone banking WSDL document, and if you go to other sample project directory, you're going to see WSDL documents. You can take a look at the WSDL document and see it makes sense to you. Okay, so in this case, it's a phone banking. Everybody is using document style, so you're going to see rarely any the RPC style. Okay, so because it's using document style, you're going to see XML schema. Okay, so you can see this is a genuine XML schema defining several elements and types. Okay, and then you see multiple messages, and then you see port type, which is a collection of operations, and each operation is using the messages you defined, right? And then you have a binding, which defines the transport. Okay, typically SOAP over HTTP, and then the encoding is again typically literal. Okay, for all those operations, and then you have a service which contains a port. Okay, and basically port is providing an address. This is the address. Okay, and you can take a look at other whistle document. All right. Okay, so right now it's actually 15 minutes to 3, so Let's have 10 minutes break, and I'm gonna give you 15 minutes to try this. So we'll get back 10 minutes after 2 o'clock. I'm sorry, 3 o'clock.